Hey guys, MCU Collector here with another figure review. Next up is the Hasbro Marvel Legends series Antman and the Wasp Quantumania Cassie Lang Build-A-Figure wave. Here we have Scott Lang himself, the Antman. And this figure is probably a little bit better than I had initially thought. The Scott Lang unhelmeted head sculpt is way better in hand than the digital render had shown. But at the same time, I believe it is the same head sculpt that we had gotten in the Marvel Studios the first 10 years Ant-Man. It looks the same to me. It really does. The digital face print has been updated. We get a better looking skin tone. Just a better all around looking head sculpt. But I think it is 100% the same. Now, Paul Rudd doesn't seem to age, so I guess maybe it's not an issue. But at the very end of Antman and the Wasp Quantumania, when Scott is walking down the street, that is the first time I ever thought Paul Rudd looked like he was getting old. So it's just kind of interesting. I guess I don't mind it because the head sculpt does look good. I always like when we get new stuff, though, not older stuff. You know, that's at this point, this head sculpt is what? 5 years old or something like that. I don't know how many years it's been, but it does look really good, so I'll give it that. And then one thing, I think the legs are a little short on this guy. Like here, when I put this one here, I guess the legs actually seem about the same height. I don't know, maybe it's just me. But the figure does look pretty good. A lot better than I had really initially thought. The digital renders kind of show a little bit more chromish color for these metal parts that he has. We get a silver color, but it's not as bright as the 3D renders shows, especially like in the helmet. As you can see, it's a little bit darker compared to what, the digital render would kind of have you think. There is no Build-A-Figure piece for Cassie Lang on this figure. 7-figure wave. He is the double pack, so you can see he does not actually contain a Build-A-Figure piece. Looking at the back, you can just see we get extra hands, we get the helmet, and then the Scott Lang head sculpt. He actually comes out of package just like this. Interesting enough, we get this Avengers logo at the top. I don't know why an Avengers logo and not like a Ant-Man logo in any kind of way, but I guess to represent the movie figures, because Ant-Man, Wasp, and King have that. It's just kind of interesting, is all. And then here is Ant-Man. So before we get into it, because I know people are going to ask and they probably won't hear it, but I got my set from Entertainment Earth. They did ship out some cases for the folks that pre-ordered the full case. And then I think they have some of the comic figures in stock right now, like Crossfire, Egghead, and Future Ant-Man are actually like in stock right now. On Entertainment Earth. Not the Wave, not Ant-Man, not Wasp, not King, not Ultron, which I think are the kind of the more in-demand figures. Those aren't in stock. Maybe they shipped out some pre-orders. I don't actually know that. But let's go ahead and get in for a closer look at Scott Lang Ant-Man. Okay, so here's the up-close look at the Scott Lang head sculpt. Again, the digital render I actually thought looked really bad. I was like, man, I just don't see Paul Rudd in that digital render. But having it in hand, I absolutely see it. And again, same head sculpt that we had gotten in the first 10 years. Oh, it's actually taller. He's actually taller. Same head sculpt as you can see here. Now, it may not look like it at first, but it's the way I kind of noticed. The digital print can make a head sculpt look, crazy different, but it has the same hair. The ears have the same exact sculpt. You get the same curvature like on the baseline. So to me, I think it's the same. I could be wrong on that. And now that I look at it on my view through my camera, this one looks a little bit wider compared to this one. And I always thought this one was a really good head sculpt, but now looking at it, the two, I'm like, man, no way it looks as good. So maybe I'm wrong on that, because I do see a bigger difference now, like side by side through my camera. In person, I'm looking, I'm like, I don't know. But again, I don't know if that's just the digital print making it look better, or in the different skin tone, or what it is. The hair is definitely the same though. But maybe we'll get confirmation somewhere else. But to me, it does look the same. It is not, obviously not the same from the one from Ant-Man and the Wasp, which gave us a goofy facial expression for Scott Lang, Paul Rudd, which, I guess makes sense that they would do that. Looks like the hair was the same on this one too, though. This one now, it's funny because now I always thought this one was a really good Paul Rudd likeness. Now looking at it, I'm like, it doesn't look as good. This is definitely the way to go. But, I guess that's just, you know, how it works out. We get some improvements, whether it's the same sculpt, but digital print, it, you know, gets better, you know, improvements made that way. So let's go ahead and pop the Scott Lang head off, because I'm not going to display it that way. We're going to display it with the helmeted head, and check out that you can see the little keyed in face portion, because through the lens you can see his eyes in there, which gives it a much more realistic look. And I'm trying to think, did the other ones do that? The other ones did not. See, it was just painted red lens. So, you know, they did not do that before, and definitely not on the first one. It didn't really pop on, but it's on there. Yeah, so that's a much better helmeted head sculpt when you can actually see the eyes through the actual translucent plastic lens. A lot of marbleization going on. I hate when that looks like, because it looks like he's got a cracked ass helmet, which I guess, you know, if King's coming around and stomping on him at the end of the movie, you know, that could almost, you know, make sense and work to your benefit there. But just one of those things, I guess. Looking at the figure, we get the circle design there. That was almost like an arc reactor type situation. I mean, you know, he puts some kind of disc there on his chest, and he presses it, and then his suit forms using nanotech, which, you know, I guess nanotech makes sense, but I wonder, you know, wouldn't it be Pimtech, like the suit is like really small or something? I don't know. It's just kind of my thoughts going there. The sculpt of it looks nice. We get some nice sculpted texture detail in the suit and throughout, which is really nice. Paintwork looks pretty good. Some red lines, some red going on in there, just black for the boots. As you can see, we're all pinless on this guy, so pinless elbows, pinless knees. Nice silver paint on the back there, but again, it's not as bright as the packaging would have you believe. Not that it's like a dark silver or dull in any way, it's just not as chromed out as those 3D renders made it look. They opted for a diaphragm joint on this guy and no waist swivel. I think it looks better in terms of the overall design of the figure, but the diaphragm cut isn't the greatest when it comes to the back movement. It actually gets a little bit more forward than we're typically used to, surprisingly. So that's actually a good thing. But let's go ahead and check out his articulation now. Okay, Antman, dumbbell joint head. So looking up is a little bit of a problem. He can only look up that much, unfortunately. Looking down, a little bit down, so that's actually pretty good. You get a full rotation in the head, of course, and you can get a lot of pivot going on, which is nice. Shoulder, it's actually a smooth working shoulder. There's no stiffness at all. So it can go straight on out. You get a full rotation, of course. You do get upper bicep swivel, and you get a double jointed elbow, which works out really nice. One thing that on this figure, the hands look kind of small because the forearm gets really small, and I feel like it's a little bit smaller than it should. Super minor nitpick, I know, but I just thought I'd point that out. Wrists swivel, and they do hinge. They have standard horizontal hinge. I forgot to mention this, but it comes with extra hands. So for left, you get a fist, and then you get an open hand, and for the right, you get a fist, and then you get a finger pointing hand. And I'm trying to think, when did he point in the movie? I just may not be remembering it correctly. I did only see it once, so it could have happened, and I just really don't remember. But he has a pointing finger for his right hand. So here we have the diaphragm cut, and we actually get a decent amount of movement coming forward. The tilt actually isn't too terribly bad. You can tilt to his left that much, tilt to his right that much. That's actually pretty good. Going back, though, is where it's super disappointing, because it essentially doesn't really go back at all, as you could see. The sculpt of it continues, the paint continues, so that is really good. And then here's forward. So looking forward, that's a fair amount, more than we typically get with most of the diaphragm cuts. And now it looks pretty ugly in the back, but if you're leaning forward, maybe you're not going to see him from the back, so it shouldn't be too much of an issue. Yeah, I mean, you guys could tell me. You do see a little bit of gap in there, but the paint and the sculpt texture does continue on, so that is really good. You do get a swivel at that diaphragm cut as well. So I think this is an example of Hasbro doing one decently. They've done better, and they can do better, and I hope they do better. But again, the tilt side to side is pretty good. The forward is pretty good. It's just the back. They need to work on that. But what I really like is that proportionally, it really lines up well. Like usually, you know, a top portion would have to be a lot larger than the bottom portion. On some figures, you'll see that with like WWE Ultimates figures. The lower torso is much smaller than the upper torso. With the diaphragm cut, but I think they did it really nicely here. And Hasbro has been hit or miss on some of that, I think. Like Quicksilver, that figure was a really good example of how perfectly aligned and proportionate it looks. So I kind of really like that there. Again, swivel there if I didn't mention that. Legs go out that far apart, which is nice. He can't kick forward that far. Not a huge amount, but it is kind of really straight out. Legs goes back tiny bit. You get an upper thigh cut in there. Double jointed pinless knee, so that much bend. Looks good. No calf swivel or anything like that. Foot hinges all the way down. A little bit of hinge up. Ankle pivot, peg holes at the bottom of the feet. So there is Antman. And yeah, I'm having a lot more fun with this guy than I initially thought I would. I'm like, oh, another Antman figure. You know, I don't really care for the head sculpt, but no. Actually having it in hand, messing with it, I'm really liking it. Okay, so here are the Antman figures all next to each other, so you can see kind of the comparisons between them. This one is actually now my favorite one. I thought the Antman and the Wasp one was really good, but now that I look at it, I'm like, it's not as good as I thought it would be. But I do like the silver that they had on the forearms. It was a little bit brighter. The belt was just a gray plastic, so which wasn't great. But paint-wise and application-wise, overall suit, design, I'm really liking this new one. But when I look at the three together, I do notice that his torso is a lot more narrow compared to the other ones where his chest, you know, was a little bit larger, which I think is a little bit more anatomically correct, which is a little unfortunate. And I think we kind of get these larger shoulders on this guy to kind of compensate for that. But when you look at it in hand, it looks a little odd. I think from far away, like as I'm looking at it on my camera, I'm like, oh, you know, I guess it doesn't look too bad when you don't see the fine, like, cut of it necessarily. But I'm really liking this new one. He's got a much smaller helmet design compared to the previous one, but I hated how this one always had a flat look to it, where this one doesn't have nearly as flat a look to it. As you can see, it kind of really sticks out a little bit more in my opinion. But yeah, I am really liking this new Antman figure. Definitely my favorite of the three now. Okay, so only 3 movie figures in this way. Well, I guess Build-A-Figure makes it 4, but we get Wasp, Antman, and King. So far, here are Antman and King together, and I thought, like, King looks a little undersized and everything, but he's taller than Antman, which is a little bit surprising. I don't know if maybe because his legs are... Yeah, I guess when I kind of put the legs together, they're about the same height. So a little bit more surprising than I would have thought. But in terms of like look at Scott's legs versus King's legs. They're much thicker. It's just for whatever reason, King, his proportions, like his arms are just way too thin. His legs are way too thin. And then like his waist would be really tiny, you know, when he has such large armor. So I just really wish that King figure just would have been a lot bulkier. But here are the two, Ant-Man and the Wasp Quantumania. I enjoyed the movie. It wasn't the greatest by any means, but I really did enjoy it, and I can't wait to be able to watch it again on digital or Disney Plus. I have the Steelbook pre-ordered with Best Buy. I think it releases on May 16th or whatever it is. But I'm really liking it. You guys let me know down in the comments below. What do you think of this Ant-Man figure? Where would you rank it amongst the 3, I guess technically 3 releases of Ant-Man? You guys let me know down in the comments below your thoughts on the Ant-Man figure. If you guys like this video, please do me a favor and hit that thumbs up button. Subscribe if you haven't already done so. Hit that join button to become a channel member and be a part of the MCU collective. And as always, thank you for watching.